so I wasn't sure if I should be introducing myself. Anyhow, I'm Professor Levi Mcneil. I work in the TESOL master's program. And so I teach classes on master's classes and doctoral classes, PhD courses on technology. And so I'm really happy because today I get to talk to you about technology. And so the title of today's talk seems really complicated, right? Intelligent systems, communication platforms, and immersive environments. So the big part about today, our main point, is going to be looking at technology as a tutor or a tool. So I'm wondering about you. How many people are primary teachers?
11.
Okay. And the secondary teachers? Okay, so almost half, almost 50-50, perfect. All right. Today, because I know that you will get a little bit bored, even though I tried to add the most exciting things in my presentation. And usually, technology is a topic that's exciting for everybody, students and teachers included. So there'll be some times throughout the lecture where you'll have a chance to talk to each other. So I'll integrate that within the ongoing lecture. So here's a question for you. So you're looking at the screen. You didn't know that you're going to have a quiz. It's a beautiful May day. You come back from lunch, quiz time. Right? So, what are we looking at here? Do you know this technology? Yeah, Microsoft Word, right? You know this. Can you see what it says here? Okay, then you see something here. Here's my first question for you. And it's a little bit of a warm-up. So here we go. Is this technology, Microsoft Word, is it good for language learning? And why? And I'm going to give you about, not very long, 20 seconds or so, and then we're going to talk together. Okay? You have about 20 seconds to think about this question. You look at
I got everything, you know.
Okay, so you had a chance to think. It was your pop quiz for today. So you're thinking about this technology, and you're thinking about, is this good for language learning or not? How many people think, yes, it is good? Okay, hands down. How many people think, no, it's not good? How many people don't know? Okay, that's fine too. That's fine too. So, for those of you who said yes, that this is good, why did you say it was good?
Checking errors.
Checking the errors, right? And so that this thing can give us some type of feedback right here, right? So I'm glad that you caught that. Here's what and I use this as a problem to start our presentation. So here's some opening questions that I have for you after you now have warmed up just a little bit, right? So, does anybody in here use technology in the classroom? Yeah. What kind of technology do you use?
I sometimes use them with conflict.
Okay.
And then I use seating arrangement program.
Okay. A seating arrangement program. Interesting. All right. Anybody else do anything?
And we all use textbook series.
Yeah. Textbooks, ebooks, right? Things like this. So, one thing that I've noticed is because of the global culture now, and it's probably been this way for thousands of years, but especially within the last 100 years, and particularly within the last 50 and 20 years. Digital technologies are a really huge part of our life, and we have such faith in technology, right? Global warming, don't matter, right? We'll make some kind of technology. Throwing our trash away, it doesn't matter. We'll devise something some technology that takes care of our trash. Teaching, don't worry, we'll take care of that too. And so there's a big pressure among teachers. And so like I said, I've been working in technology for about 15 years now. And so my research is working with teachers, training with teachers, understanding how people use technology, not only in the classroom, but also outside for everyday life. And so I try to look at the intersections between those two things, kind of organic or natural uses of technology, and then also classroom uses of technology. So I look at the intersections of those. The reason why I say that teachers are under pressure sometimes with technology is because of that belief that technology is going to save us, right? But it's been my experience when I'm working with teachers that's often really difficult for them to know what to use, how to know what to use. And so sometimes we don't get any input. We don't have a say in what technologies that we can use as teachers. But sometimes we do. So today what I'm trying to hope for, my goal, is that I can give you some type of framework, some type of concept to help you think about a technology. And so today what we're going to do, here's the objectives. Have you guys seen something like this before? At the end of this, you will be able to sound familiar to you, right? I wrote that especially for you because I knew that you were coming. Okay, you're going to be determined, you'll be able to decide, is a technology functioning or working as a tool or a tutor? Right now you have no idea maybe what those mean. By the end of this lecture you will. Okay, you'll be able to provide and importantly use criteria to help you think about the usefulness of technology for your context. And that's one big point that I'm saying today. So people often know me as the technology guy. But here's the thing. I will not tell you you should use this technology or you shouldn't use this technology. It's your choice. But I'm going to help you think about some things when you're making those choices. And then finally, I'm going to show you different types of technologies. And you will know these intuitively, implicitly. You might not know those names, but I'll teach you those things today too. So that's what we're going to talk about. So here's our first prompt again. You will see something familiar here. It's what we saw before. And then we have this side, this side, this side, this side, this side. What's the difference between the two? How is the technology supporting learning? How's it supporting? What's the technology doing? And you might want to look at that side. It looks a little bit clearer. This one is not as good.
Like providing better options.
Providing options. Right. So now we're starting to think. Earlier, we made a good observation, and we said that this thing here is could be good for language learning. Why? Because it provides some type of feedback, right? And now we're noticing when we compare this to this, that maybe this one is better because of these things, right? And so now you're on your first step to being able to look at technology. Again, the big part is not every technology is good, because it's not the case. Anytime you use some technology, you will get something beneficial, but you will also get something negative. And you have to understand those relationships between the two. Okay, so here's the difference between a tutor and a tool. So as a tutor, the program, it analyzes, evaluates, and provides feedback. And as a tool, it's just an enabling device. As a tutor, analyzes, evaluates, feedback. as a tool, it just enables between the two. So we're going to practice this. I'm going to show you a number of different technologies. Some of them I'm guessing that you haven't seen. Is anybody familiar with English Central? Anybody? Okay, good. Like I said today, this will be another one of the fun parts, is that I'm going to show you a lot of different technologies maybe you've never seen before. So here's the first one. Okay, so there's 4 parts of how this works. First, you can see you're going to watch a video. And then, you're going to learn. You're going to learn new words by filling in the blanks while interacting with the video. 3, and by the way, I should say this. You will have access to this PowerPoint. So you don't have to try to write down everything if you don't want to. You'll be able to see this PowerPoint. So that's the second step. The third step is that you're going to speak, and you're going to get some feedback on pronunciation and fluency. And then finally, you're going to go have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. So let me show you a little bit of how this works. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to watch, right? So here's our video. When I put my cursor over the video, what do you see down here? What do you guess this is? The subtitles, right? That's exactly what's going on. Can you see any chunks? You see these little chunks? Watch what happens. Let's turn it up.
And the people who love you, who put you there. And that will be the greatest feeling in the world. Thank you for this moment.
So when we press any of those words, we have something that comes up. And this is how you're interacting first. That's the first step, right? Here's the second step. This is how you learn the words.
Thank you for this moment.
Okay. And then the third part.
Thank you for this moment.
Thank you for this moment.
Okay. And then finally.
Can you tell me what the video is about?
It's about how Taylor Swift felt about winning an award.
Can you make a sentence using thank you?
Thank you for your time.
Great job!
Okay. So you get some basic idea, but I'm going to show you a little bit more. So there's different levels. Can you guys see this okay? And is the volume okay?
Yeah.
Everybody can hear? Maybe too loud or it's okay? It's okay? Okay. So you have different levels of videos. Beginner, intermediate, high level. And so students can pick videos based on their levels. They can also pick by genres, for example, academic things, by kids things, grammar focus. Okay, so we're going to look at one of the videos one more time.
But then I did manage.
Let's look at okay, I haven't watched this.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Court's Report.
Can you see the message that it's giving us on the bottom of the screen? Our computer's a little bit weird with the size, so we can show, but you can see when I'm clicking play. The first one was a demonstration. This will also be a demonstration. So, but we haven't signed up for this, so there's only some things we can do, but it will still give you the idea of how this works. So when I push play, it will show you some information here, and it will show you some other information to watch.
Mother's Day is right around the corner. It's a
So I can click on any of the words.
Mom.
How much?
And there's an example here, right? So, so as you go through those different steps, remember there's the 4 steps. First, as it's the actor in the video is playing, you can click on any of the words. The second step, what's going to happen? You're going to type the words in. The third step, what's going to happen? You're going to speak the words. And then the fourth step, then you can have some interaction with somebody, right? Perfect. So, the question is this. Is this technology? So I've shown you a little bit about English Central. Is this technology a tutor or a tool?
Tutor.
Okay. Why do you think it's a tutor? It provides feedback. Okay, good point. What are some of the things, the positives of this system? This is a really important question because remember, like I always said, something, when you choose something, it will give you some power, but it will take away some power, right? So what are the positives? What are the supports of this?
Give scaffolding.
Give scaffolding? How does it give scaffolding? Good point. How does it scaffold? How did it give scaffolding? You're right.
Depends on the levels.
Depends on the levels. Okay, so levels a really big point. How do we see something about levels? Video selection, right? Remember how those ding, 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 those 3 different parts? So there's video selection. So there's a type of scaffolding there. What else?
Categories and subtitles.
The subtitles, right? As they're reading through or watching the video, there's the subtitles. And not only is there subtitles, but there's other scaffolding that if you click the words, then you get an example sentence. It says it for you, so that's scaffolding as well. What else do we like about this?
It's in the sentence chunk.
It's in a chunk, right? And so it gives it to us in some type of context. Good point.
It gives chance to practice almost every language skills, like reading, writing, speaking.
Okay, good point. It starts to integrate language skills. So it does have a reading part, we can read that. We're listening to the video. The writing part, maybe by typing, right? It's just limited. And then we have the speaking skills. We're speaking into it in our interactions one-on-one. Okay, so that question, this question up here, how is learning being supported? That's always one of the key questions when you're considering a technology. You have to think about what is this thing doing, right? So, and we said that this was a tutor, didn't we? Yeah. So here's the way that it works. This looks pretty complicated, right? So it's actually not so complicated. On the top, you have some type of area that's your curriculum. From there, it's going to present a test question or a problem. That's going to be based on your curriculum. Then the expert's going to input the problem, the answer to the problem earlier, and the student is going to give it some type of input, just like we saw with English Central, right? Afterwards, they're going to compare this one to this one. And then they can say it's yes or no, right? So it's comparing what the student said to what's already been programmed. Pretty simple, that idea. Based on that evaluation, if it's correct, we go to the next question and we do it again, right? If it's incorrect, then we can do more help. We can go to help sessions. We can give different types of help here. So this is how the underlying organization or architecture of tutorial types of technologies. The same basic idea. Sometimes they get more complicated, but this is the basic structure of it. So we asked earlier what this technology can do to support learning. But my question to you now is, and I'll give you a little bit of time to talk, is there anything this technology cannot do? And I'll give you about 30 seconds. You can talk with your partner. What can this English Central not do? So we were thinking about some of the ways or some things that the technology couldn't do, right? What do we think of? And by the way, I can tell that you're a really good group. And so, you know, I give different lectures, I give presentations more or less all over the world, give lectures in the classroom, right? And I can tell that you're a good group. How can I know? Because I can see how intensely you're talking. Not only that you're just talking, but you're talking about this stuff, right? So the proof, this is another part of my research, the proof is always in the actions. You can look at the actions of the people, you can do linguistic analyses of their interactions, and you can see. So anyhow, what did we find out about what this technology could not do? What could it not do?
This technology can limit diversity of pronunciation.
It could, the diversity of pronunciation. How does it limit that? That's a really good point. How is it limited?
To American accent.
It could be, right? It could be an American accent, right? Really good point. What else? What else could it not do?
I think that the technology is not in the authentic way. It means like in classroom we practice those expressions with our real friends in that aims to use that language, but it's just for practicing.
That's right. That's a good point. It's almost drill and kill. And what she's talking about is an authentic communicative context. That's what she's saying, in other words. Really good. Anything else that you can see? What is it?
No humor.
No humor. Right? That's why they hired me. So there is no humor. Humor is really important, isn't it? So, again, as educators, we have to find ways that make students interested. If they're not interested, then all the good things that could happen aren't going to happen. They have to engage. If you think about kind of older teaching, and maybe it's happened to you, and maybe you've done this as a teacher, but when people aren't paying attention in your class, right? We know this implicitly. When our students aren't paying attention, that means they're not learning, right? So we're always trying to make them pay attention. So when I was a boy, the teachers during that time would have a ruler, and if you're not paying attention, they slap it on the desk. Wake up, right? Look around. So they make you pay attention. So a couple of points there. I'll tell you a couple of techniques just because we've said this. By the way, that you can control students is by using their voice. And when you change the voice, people listen. Just like that. And so, as you become a master teacher, you learn how to use everything. Your body, your eyes, your voice to change and direct students' attention. That's just like what we're talking about here. One other thing that I've used over time is also the laser pointer. You can use than she lives, right? And that's a way that you can extend your reach all the way across the classroom. Anyways, it's a different type of technology. So, here's another one of these things. You're like, oh my God, please make this simple, right? Why do you have to show us something like this? And so, let me explain it. We're thinking about using this evaluation screen about how, as teachers, we can decide what technology to use. And remember, that's our point for today. That's what I'm trying to help you with. So, here's some things, and I'll just explain them to you. Is that teacher fit? So remember that there's a teaching approach inside that software. And so this was kind of the point that this teacher was just telling us, is that it's kind of drill and kill. There's no real communicative context. So remember that the program looks like this on the inside. It's not a human, but it was created by a human, right? And so because it has to compare this one, the student's output, with the experts, there's only so many things the computer can predict, right? It's limited, which is your point earlier. It's limited. You can only think about how many possible responses somebody can say. And language, as we know, just like humans, are unpredictable, right? So that's one point. So we have to think about the approach, the teaching approach in the software. Another thing is, how well does it meet your learners' needs in relation to the objectives of the course? So earlier, one person, and I forgot who said this, I also think it was her, was talking about that was integrated skills, English Central, right? But we said maybe the writing part was not very robust. It was a little bit lacking. So how many of you teach writing? How many of you teach, I'm just interested now, how many teach reading? How many teach integrated skills? How many teach communication? How many teach vocabulary? Okay. Grammar. Okay. What else? Listening. Okay. A lot of listening out there. What else do we not get? Speaking, right? Speaking? Maybe, kind of. Okay. That gives me a good idea too. So, we're always going back to the objectives. If your class, for example, is speaking, but this is not much, doesn't have much of a representation or practice for speaking, right? You're speaking a couple words, but you're basically just repeating, right? At the very end, you have a one-on-one interaction. So that could be speaking practice, perhaps, right? So again, when you start, this helps you think about your context, these questions. So when you think about your context, that's how you're going to evaluate the technology. This is also really important. Oftentimes people don't think about this when they're considering technology for the classroom, but this is a big one. It's what students are going to need to know in order to use it. How much time will it take them to learn the technology itself? So for example, we have English Central, right? With English Central, you're going to have to sign up, you're going to have to learn, teach the students all those little symbols about 3 different levels, all the different categories, about setting up their microphone, right? You have to teach them all those things. And so that's another big part that we always think about, is how much time it's going to take them to learn the technology. What about this one? The cost. We're always thinking about the cost. How many of you have a budget from the school? The school gives you money for technology. No budget here, right? And so as teachers, we're always wondering, and maybe you're thinking already, how much does that cost, right? And of course that's going to cost money. So here's a couple things that you can do. You could sign up for one subscription. If you do individual student, I don't remember the cost. Let's say it's Iman, right? Iman times 20 students, Sashiban. Visada. Expensive. So what you could do, maybe, is that you could buy one account, and then you could take turns, and you could have groups of students, and you're the Monday evening outside of school users, you're the Tuesday, you're the Wednesday, you're the Thursday, you're the Friday. And each day, certain groups of students could use one account. They could log into the site. Another thing that you could do is that as you have, all of you have computers in your classroom, correct? So at minimum, you're going to have at least one screen and one projector, right? You can use English Central or other things as a teacher. You can have some groups, students working together on answering those questions. As they're working together, you can go and help other students, and you can get feedback on what they're doing there, right? You could set up some type of cycles around the classroom, what they could do. Anyhow, I like the very bottom part down here, and I've italicized this. It may be helpful to think of judging a program's teaching presence the way you would judge a human teacher. So ultimately, one or more humans created that program, right? Do you want that person teaching your students with that material? And that's what you got to think about, right? You're in control. It's not just because something looks cool. And that's kind of what my first example is here to show you. Some things look so cool, right? You're like, wow, and there's a lot of buzz and hype, and you're like, okay, so you spend Sasha on, and then it doesn't come out much. Because early you have to think about what it can do. Okay, let's go to another example. Anybody use this technology? Turnitin? Nope, okay. Turnitin is focused on writing. And so there's a lot of really good things about Turnitin, and we're going to look at it. We're going to take a tour with Turnitin. So it's going to take us on this short tour here. This is one aspect, and it's called Revision Assistant. So it helps students improve their writing with every draft. So that's every time they do something with writing. So here's this short tour. This is Tessa. Tessa's a 9th grader. She's using the assistant to check an assignment. So let's get started. Okay. There's a prompt. And so the prompt is something that makes students write, right? So this is a standards aligned prompt. And what that means is this software has been created in relation to national or state standards for writing. So that's how they make a prompt. So here, Tessa needs to argue. She needs to decide whether library should censor materials that other people might find sensitive or offensive, or if libraries shouldn't do that, censoring that. So that's the topic. Here, we can see, here's the pre-writing stage. Here's some different aspects here. This is a brainstorm. She needs to brainstorm ideas for her claim, her evidence, and her conclusion. How many people here teach writing again? Not so many? Okay, then I'll go through this a little bit quicker. Usually when we're teaching writing, there's a process. Brainstorming, writing once, feedback, write again, write, then submit the paper. It's a process that students go through. So here's the brainstorming of how that program helps her with that. Here's the feedback for draft number 1. Her first draft is too short to earn a score, so she gets a score of nothing, no score. It's too short. Revision suggests ways to expand her ideas. So here's a way to improve. State your claim, include evidence, use punctuation. So it's telling her, showing her ways to make her essay, her writing longer. Here's her second time. See draft number 2. Here's her score. We have the claim part, we have the support part, the organization part, and the language part. Which one did she do good in? None of them really, but she did stronger here with organization, 2 out of 4, and language, 2 out of 4. So, 2 out of 4 bars for each room. This gives her holistic suggestions. So it's giving her some ideas there. You can see the highlights. Do you see the highlights in her draft over here, the red ones and the green ones? So they're showing her some of the things that she is doing good, but it also highlights some things that she needs to change. And so these things deal with the rubric, the way that she's being evaluated. Here's some of the feedback again, language and style, information. I know that you're getting a bit tired here. It teaches her about using proofreading. And then finally, here's her draft 4 score. Is that the score increase? Did she do better here? Yep, she got better here, she got better here. She improved a little bit here from there. So overall, this is showing us how she improved across the different score. She turns something in, she goes through the process, she gets feedback. So that's what turn it in is. Here's your questions. I've made them a little bit more expanded and detailed. So you'll answer these together. Is it a tutor or tool? Remember that question. How's learning being supported? What are some of the positive? These things here are from the Hubbard scheme. They're from this thing. This thing. That's what you find here and here. Okay? I'll give you 20 seconds. 30 seconds it is. Okay, 30 seconds and we'll talk together. Okay, let's talk about some of the things that you're able to spot. So, is it a tutor or tool? How do you know? It evaluates. It evaluates and provides feedback. That's how you know. So early on, that first question you're going to ask yourself is, how is learning being supported? If the computer itself, as an intelligent system, is giving, if it's analyzing students' feedback and giving feedback, then it's a tutor, right? What did you think some of the positives were? positives? What kind of teaching style does it have? It teaches process. That's usually kind of popular with teaching writing, not the only way, but it's usually popular. Most teachers are okay with teaching writing as a process. Does it relate to your objectives? You guys said you don't teach writing, right? So that's probably not useful for us so much. What else are some positive things about this technology? Let's imagine. You have to think about, yes, I can see it now. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, a year from now, you're in the classroom. And so your boss, after taking this type of program, they know that you're a really good teacher. So they're going to give you the best students in the school, and you're going to teach a class on writing. So you're excited about it because writing is a big deal, blah, 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 blah. And then the first day, can I see this for a second? You have 10 students in your class, and they write, here's their homework first day. And then the second, boom, did you hear that? How heavy it is? We'll go up, right? Whoosh. And so, what does Turnitin do for us, the technology? It saves our time. We love that. There's two things we really love, when it saves our time and when it saves our money, right? So when it can do those things, we're super happy. And sometimes we'll pay money if it really saves enough time. So if you ever teach writing, Turnitin might be something that you think about, because how much time it takes you to go through reading and making all those comments, right? It takes a really long time. So soon we'll take a break just to let you know. Right, we got one more thing to look at here. The bad thing about Turnitin, again, is that there's a cost involved with it. And so that's something, but again, if you're thinking about the relationship between cost and time, maybe it's something you want to look at. We're going to look at one more thing before we go to break. We're going to look at hot potatoes. People know what hot potatoes is? Today? Perfect. So, a lot of the things that you're looking at, I teach 6 different technology classes for the master's and PhD program. So, there's different types of technologies, and hot potatoes is one of them. And by the way, a lot of the instructors that you have were my students. So, that makes sense. We know what this is, then I'll show you a very quick example. So you only did it for one day, or you're going to do it more than one day, or just one day? Were you able to create something? Yeah, the J quiz. Yeah, J mix. Okay, good. I'll show you a couple things related to this. So here's a J quiz, and over time these are pretty simple to do. Hopefully it's not too loud. And you can't see this, unfortunately. This says click here, click to hear the word, right? And then they need to type it in, right? So we'll see.
J quiz can be used to make short answer or multiple choice quizzes. In this example, a soundbite is used in a spelling quiz. The student clicks on the link, which opens up a media player, which plays the soundbite, in this case the word being read, and then types the answer in the space.
Okay, so I know that that's a little bit fast, and it's changing the pronunciation on you a little bit. So, they click the button. This is what you can do later, now that you're learning hot potatoes. You can bring in sound files or multimedia files. So the student clicks that, they hear certain words, and then they have to type it in. After they type it in, then they're going to get feedback. This is what that part shows. It will say yes or no. And let me take it back just a little bit. This is the interesting thing. So they type it in and then they check their answer, yes or no. And they can also get hints. So there's 2 types of feedback when you're working with hot potatoes. Let me show you one more, multimedia type of thing. Okay, we have our instructions on the top. Click on the player, watch and listen to the video. Number 2, choose the correct word. So here's the words that they're listening to. They're going to click these and have choices, right? And then you can check button down here to get feedback. So we'll listen to it.
You say yes, I say no. You say stop, I say go, go, go.
You say
yes.
I say
No.
yeah, let's see what happens.
No.
Say stop. I say go. Go. Let's see if it's correct. 83, some of your answers are incorrect. And so this is just one example. How is this working here? Tutor or tool? Tool. Tutor, because it's giving us feedback, right? It's analyzing and giving us feedback. What type of teaching is this? Drill and kill, right? It's drilling. And so it's not that drill and kill is always bad. It can be good things. A good thing. You have to make sure with your class that you got a balance of both. You have to give them types of ways to create language, but there also has to be some type of accuracy to it too. So far we've looked at intelligent systems. That's what we have here. These are intelligent systems. They can analyze students' input, and they can give some type of feedback, and like we learned early on, is that some systems are smarter than other systems, is that they can give more nuanced or more complex feedback. So that's what we've learned so far. Let's take a break. We'll come back in 10 minutes. So that's basically 3 o'clock. So welcome back from the break. I hope that you have a wonderful break. We move now to the second half of the lecture. And so I've added what I think to be the more interesting stuff in the second half of the lecture. The first half of the lecture, I've given you kind of the concepts. Now you understand, for example, tutor tool, right? You understand some of the benefits and the negatives. So we're going to look at some different types of technologies. We'll start with the first one, which is pretty simple. So we have this screen. Anybody know what this is a screen from? Skype. It could easily be. This could easily be Kakao Talk, right? It could be FaceTime. It could be a host of other communicative technologies. And now you can hear that. This is our second type of technology, communication or communicative technologies, communication platforms. So, what do we think? We see some people, right? There's 3 people that's there. Do we think that this one is a tutor or tool? Tool, she says. Why do you think so?
It's a tool that we use to communicate and teaching, but the program itself doesn't do teaching.
Right, the program itself doesn't do anything. It's just, remember what we said as a tool is an enabling device. Remember that definition I gave you like an hour ago?
Yeah.
See if you can find it. It's an enabling device. That one. So the tool is just an enabling device. There is no teaching built into Skype, right? It's not part of Skype. It's not part of Kakao Talk. It's not part of FaceTime, right? So, with tools, there's no identifiable teaching structure. It only enables. It enables, though, a lot of different things. For example, it enables interaction. It enables collaboration. So, in the middle here, we have the learner, the computer, and then the other side. The way I like to think of this is the computer is in the middle. It's mediated. And so if I'm speaking with him, we could talk through, he could see my face on the screen, and I could see his face on the screen. And we're just going through the technology, right? But there are interactions around the computer then. There's things that are happening, and that's what this is showing us here. There can be peer interactions around the computer, or peer-to-peer on this side. You could also interact with the teacher. Other things. Some key theories here. Maybe you've heard of these. I think that you have. Negotiation for meaning, negotiation of meaning. You've heard of that? Yeah, good. You've heard of the ZPD, and I know that you've heard of scaffolding, right? So here, when technology is a tool, now these types of theories or concepts, they come into play. So, another thing, another theoretical concept is TBLT. I like this one. Biting the dog in the tail. Dog's running away. Look at him biting on that, right? This is how we try to add humor to our lesson. Not really. So, TBLT. Because in this environment, where does the teaching come from? A human. That means if you are using communication platforms, you are the designer. It's not the same as the tutor, where the tutor was designed by somebody, right? Remember that picture that we showed in the feedback? Now you have to design the environment. So how are you going to design that? This is where it becomes, at the same time, creative. There's not as many limitations, but because it's open and free, that means you have to add structure to it. And that's how the concepts give you structure. So, have you guys talked about task types of tasks? For example, jigsaw tasks. How can we make a jigsaw with this using this technology? Now we start to get complicated. How can we make a jigsaw out of this? Jigsaw is, what is it again? We like the word saw. Cutting too, right? So, what you could do, how many students do we want to have talking? In this picture we have 1, 2, 3. We need at least 2, right? So, what do we have? Let's say we pick 2. 1 and 2. So we have 2 students. We have that picture. What are we going to do with it? Got to cut it in half, right? So what we can do is give this picture to student A. This one, student B. Student A, student B. Student A, student B. A, B. And then we can mix the scenes. And so they have to work together on Skype as they're talking to each other, right? They can talk to each other either voice or they can type out the answers, right? And so if they're typing out the answers, which type of skill do you think it helps? No, I knew you were going to say it. It's not writing. We planned this beforehand. You know, sometimes the magician asks somebody from the audience, make sure you say it's writing. Writing? It's not writing. It's actually what we type in chat is very similar to our spoken language. So for second language learners, foreign language learners, it's really good environment to practice speaking. Why? Because you can see this thing that we call, it's not ephemeral. And so when I say something, there it went. As I'm talking, it evaporates. It's gone. But when you're talking here, it doesn't evaporate. Remember, just like you saw in English Central with the subtitles, that's what's happening when you're texting, right? So you use a spoken type of language, but it's there. And so the other person, like for example, if I'm reading if we're accounting in Korean, it's so much easier for me. If I don't catch something in Korean when we're talking, I have to say it one more time, right? But there I don't have to because I can keep studying it. Also, the student, when they're presenting or creating their message, they have a long time. planning time is much longer, and that can be beneficial for them. So what we've talked about here, we said that Skype, or this communication platform, is a type of tool. It's a type of tool that enables, but once it enables, you have to create something. And so we gave the example of creating this type of thing, of a jigsaw. We can mix up the pictures. We gave one example. I'll give another example too. So we said earlier that you need to have at least 2 people, but actually I know a way that you can do it with just one person. Students have a voice recorder on their phones, right? So they can look at one picture, record their voice, and then pick up another picture and record their voice, right? They're talking to themselves in the computer, right? And they can play that back. And so they can listen to playbacks and give form-focused feedback on their own performance. It's possible. Okay. How many of you have heard of telecollaboration? Nobody. Exactly. See, this is what I have to do. I'm the magician, right? So this, as the thing goes on, I have to show you more interesting and more interesting and more interesting. And then just before 4 o'clock, it's going to turn into a circus. I'm going to ride a little bicycle. So this is pretty interesting stuff, actually. Again, I teach a course on this. But when we're looking at this, what do we see here? People. What is this thing? The world. This is connections. What do you guess telecollaboration is? Connecting people in classrooms across the world. And so I'm going to show you a website. That's a really interesting website. It's getting cold in here. Let's turn up the heat. Or actually, let's just turn this off for a second. See, that's another type of teaching tip that I can give you. Remember earlier we were going to use our voice to control the students. If your class is too warm, guarantee you they're going to sleep. Right? So you have to keep them awake. Fresh air is good. Today the yellow dust is bad. But fresh air is good, and if you can keep it a little bit cooler, it usually helps. So what we see up here on this website, this is called Uni Collaboration, UN as in United Nations. We have some, can you see the tabs here? Can you see that in the back? Or do I need to make it bigger? Make it bigger? No, you're okay. So we have home, we have partners, we have tasks, projects, evaluation, training forums, blah, 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 blah. Let me show you something. So let's say that, what are we talking about again? Telecollaboration. Telecollaboration is people coming together from distant places, different nations, countries, talking to each other. So, you need to be able to find partners, right? Here's where you can find partners. We can look at classes. So in order to find partners, you can look at different languages, you can look at different proficiency levels, you can look at different countries, but I'll just show you what we have here. So here's some people in France that are looking to share English. Here are some people in Spain looking to share English. This is the university level, also English, university. Argentina. And so that we can see that there's how many pages? A lot of different pages. So you could sign up for this site and you could put a promotion out. Oh, I have these students and that we're learning whatever language you're learning, but probably English, right? And you can set up something. But you'll probably use Skype, or you'll probably use some type of blog or wiki. But what that means is technology would be functioning as a tool. And when technology is a tool, what does that mean for you? That means we gotta create, we gotta design. What kind of tasks can you do with students from other countries? You don't have an idea, right? Maybe a little bit. So, also on this website, they have tasks. Here's some tasks that you can find. They do it by language. Here's the task data bank. Cultural speaking, biographical writing, sociolinguistics, chain stories. Do we know what chain stories are? One person writes part of it, we send it overseas, they write part of it and send it back, right? And the list goes on and on. If you're designing, when it's a tool, you have to design, right? We understand that at this point. So the site gives you partners, it gives you tasks. What else do you have to do? Evaluate, right? How are you going to evaluate what the students are doing? So it also gives you some ideas on evaluation too. So this is one interesting website of many. One way that you can connect your students to the broader world. Here's one of my current areas of research focus. Online digital games. How many people in here play digital games? A couple people, yeah. We can see with the age demographics, as you go younger in age, more and more people play digital games. And digital games has surpassed movies as the dominant cultural product across the developed world. So more people will be playing games this week than will be going to watch Avengers, what is it, Endgame? What's the name of it?
Endgame.
Yeah, right. More people will play games this week than watch all the movies combined. Isn't that interesting? And I think this says something about the developed world. We're at a point now in human history where education, most people don't like to just sit and be told what to do the whole time. Because the rest of our lives, outside of education, we have so many choices. The environment has changed to us, right? And so this is why we have to think about how we teach, because the people that we're teaching are different. They're not the same. It's not the same when I was a little kid. Somebody slapped the ruler, right? It's a different time out there. So I have a picture of a book that's a really interesting book, and if you ever take the class Digital Gaming with me, we'll read that book. And so it's what video games have to tell us about teaching and language and learning. So you're thinking right now, there's no way that games can be helpful, right? Games are waste of time. Games are for kids. Games are violent. Games don't have good language, right? That's what you're thinking. So I'm going to show you 3 different aspects of games, especially since some of you haven't played them before. So the first thing that I'm going to show you, I'll just take you through about a minute. Now, actually we'll do about less. We'll do about 40 seconds. This is one game that's called, and it's not overly popular. It's called Villagers and Heroes. And this is the game that me and my master's and doctoral students played together to help us study games and to study language and to study text. So, I'm not trying to say that you need to use this game in your class. That's not what I'm saying? I'm just showing you what gaming looks like, 3 aspects of it. So here's the first one. Right. Usually in multiplayer games, there's at least two forms of live chat. One is what we call global chat. That's anybody in the game at that time. The second type is what? Team chat. That means you just talk to your team members. And so this is using language for communicative purposes, right? You're working with, your students can be working with other groups of people to try to solve problems that you didn't have to design, multimedia problems that are interesting, right? So I've shown you two parts of games: in-game tasks, which are called quests, chatting, and I'm going to show you one more aspect of games. Anybody know what this is? Steam is the name of a website that's really famous for media and especially games, right? So people come here to talk about games and, for example, talk shows and all kinds of other things. So this is discussions. And so the players of the game, they're going to not only talk to each other in the game, like we said with the chat, but they're going to go to discussion boards. And on the discussion boards, they're going to do a lot of different things. For example, they're going to ask questions to each other. They're going to give tips, hints, strategies to each other. They're also going to take pictures in the game or to write new stories related to the game. This all happens in places like this. So, let's see if there's anything here. This is just showing where they can trade. Some people can trade this thing for that thing in the game. But the main idea is, can you see this over here on the far right? What do these things show us? How many people answered, right? So again, in your classrooms, who do your students get to talk to? They get to talk to the person next to them or around them in their little group. If they write something, who do they write to? The teacher, right? And so what kind of communicative context do they have, right? Who can they, and this is something that I talk about in my classes, and especially the theoretical classes. Who can you be? And this is one of the biggest questions of mankind. And this is what we see today with marketing, with education, with everything. We are understanding that us as human beings, me, Levi, the person I am in front of you, is totally different than when I'm Levi, the other thing. We have different identities. And so, when you're a student, the type of identity options that you have are usually limited to one: student. You can only be a student. When you're a student, what happens to you when you're a student? When you're a student, very rarely do you get to be correct. Very rarely can you be proud, right? But when you're your other identities, you can be something successful. But when you come to school and students take on the student identity, as teachers, nope, minus points, minus points, minus points, right? We're always looking for the negative. And so this is a really big idea about giving students different positions, different identities that they can be. And what we've noticed is when you can give people a different language identity, then they can really grow. But in order to get that identity, you have to have real communication. So this is one thing that we're thinking about. Games. So I showed you 3 different parts of games. The in-game tasks, in-game chats, online discussions. There's multiple layers of communication language in all of these different things. question to you then, to help you stay awake, is what kinds of questions might you ask about games? Think about the questions that we've talked about today. What kinds of evaluation questions can you ask? If you're going to evaluate a technology, what's one of the first questions you might ask? See how I'm putting you in your student identity right now? How is learning being supported? How is learning being supported is one of our first questions. And then, once we can identify, because when we answer that question, it's actually the tutor tool answer, usually, right? And from there, we start to go lower. What other things might we ask? Remember the Hubbard's model? Teaching approach, your objectives. What is it? Yeah. And we also have to think about not only the cost, we have to think about the time for students to learn, right? So, cost of games, usually free. The amount of time it takes the student to learn the game, usually high, right? So you have to think about that. What about your language objectives, your learning objectives? Will they be in the game? Probably not. They could be, they could not be, right? That's another big thing that we learned in that digital gaming class, is how to bridge these naturalistic, these things are happening in the wild, they're out there, but they're not made specifically for language education. So what we have to do is to build around it. Again, we're the designers. We can take whatever materials there and we can design around it, but we have to know what we're looking for. So these are some of the things that you might do. I'll show you one other thing that I've done. Do you notice anything about this question? Do you notice how it's different than the earlier question? Same question I asked you. I'm removing the scaffolding from you. Earlier, I showed you the specific questions. I'm trying to take those away. Why am I taking them away? Because then I'm expecting you to be more active. And secondly, I'm expecting you to start to internalize that. Remember, one of my objectives for this lecture was that you could provide and use criteria. You have to be able to answer that question in your head. Because later, unfortunately, I'm not going to be there with you throughout your whole life. Makes me sad. I won't be there all the time. When you pick up a technology, if you go beep, I can just sit there. Well, hello. And we can look at the technology together. Right? So these are some of the things that you want to think about. Some of the key concepts, these are, and I'm not going to go too crazy into these because I know you haven't heard them. But in order to understand how this is happening, you have to have a different frame, a different way of looking at language and education. For example, you might want to talk about socialization, becoming somebody, understanding communities of practice. These things you've never heard of, I'm sure. Not just talk about literacy, reading and writing, but literacies, reading and writing for specific groups with specific types of language. Like I said, taking on an identity, shifting from just English to Englishes. Now there's certain types of Englishes. Like I said, some of the implications here, we have to start thinking who the learners are and who they want to become. And importantly, this connects in a direct way schooling and the real world. That's how we're making those connections. There's not just schooling and the real world. It's schooling and the real world. They're together. So in this, when you're starting to think about games and these other things, you need to be able to understand realms, areas, aspects of human activity so that you can prepare students for those activities, and then you have to design ways to scaffold or support students. do that. So let's look at some immersive environments. Remember, I told you I'd talk about 3 different types today. So this is our 3rd type. Gaming is a type of immersive environment. I'm going to show you another immersive environment, okay? In immersive environments, I'm pretty sure that anybody do anything with gaming in your class? Virtual worlds, right? So again, these days, these types of questions are the focus of my research. Augmented reality, virtual reality, gaming, putting people in situations, not just turning to your partner, that's important too, but they can turn to the world, right? Anyways, let me show you what this is. This is TILA, the telecollaboration. Remember what telecollaboration is? Remember those students coming together from across the world? So what some people are doing, you see this world back here? They're creating virtual worlds, settings, and people from different places in the world are meeting there to practice language. So this is what we're going to look at. By the way, this is for intercultural learning. You guys have an intercultural communication class? Yeah. So this is for intercultural learning, and that's the goal of it. So there's going to be some different languages in here. We'll watch a minute or 2. Question. Are we okay with the temperature? Yes. Okay.
Quality of foreign language teaching and learning processes by means of meaningful telecollaboration among peers. One way of doing this is by using virtual worlds. After logging in from school or home, students can visit one of the virtual villages where they can meet students from other countries to talk about lots of subjects in a chosen language. Let's see what is happening at the French campsite.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Il y a un problème avec l'emplacement de camping.
Nous n'avons pas d'électricité.
Nous avons tout essayé.
C'est curieux. Je vais vous trouver une solution.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Now let's switch to a terrace in Valencia.
Hola, buenos días.
Hola, ¿puedo obtener algo de beber?
¿Cuál es la bebida local aquí?
Bueno, pues la bebida local aquí son las horchatas. Es una bebida refrescante, dulce, está hecha a base de horchata y es rico ahora en verano, es una bebida ideal.
Estupendo, muy bien. Dos, por favor.
In the English village, there is a conversation in the hotel.
Good morning. Can I help you?
Hello. We want to complain about our room.
Yeah, it is not really clean and the window does not close.
Could you fix that?
Yes, of course, it can be fixed. Let me see, maybe in an hour or so.
Okay, so what you can see up here, this is OpenSim or simulator. Maybe some of you have heard about, for example, Minecraft. Has anybody heard about Minecraft? It's a different type of sandbox. And so these are virtual worlds where the user gets to create certain types of situations. This stuff's really interesting. And now finally, we're at the point where we can change language education. We can take it not just in the classroom is important. Make no mistake, the classroom is important. But the way for us to make that leap, we have to as teachers, because these are only tools. For example, Minecraft's not made specifically for language education. We have to know as teachers how to build and how to design. But once we can, then we can unlock all this different potential. I'm going to show you one last technology. Maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. Has anybody heard of Duolingo? Duolingo? A couple people, yeah. So what I'm going to show you here is about 1 minute, and what I have to show you, this is what's really hard for me, because I don't have that long to talk to you. So I have to find just enough of an image so that you know what I'm talking about. So I can only find really the promotional video. So I'm just going to show you part of the promotional video, but it will give you an idea of how Duolingo works. Here it comes.
Let's say you're a native English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. We start by giving you a sentence from a Spanish website and asking you to translate it.
Did you hear how it starts? So whatever language that you want to learn, it starts by giving you a sentence that you need to translate from the language. This is Spanish. And so let's imagine that that's what I wanted to learn. This is what the machine gives me.
Wait, back up. How can you translate a language you don't know? First, Duolingo only gives you sentences that fit your language level. Beginners get the really simple sentences from the web, and advanced users get the more complex ones. This way, everybody becomes a valuable translator. And second,
so did you hear what happened there? So if you're beginning level, then you only get really simple sentences to translate, and it will give you different information the higher that you go. Second, I like the
if you're really lost, you can always seek possible translations for words you don't know.
If you're really lost, there's scaffolding. That's what it just showed you.
Afterwards, Duolingo helps you understand and memorize the words you hovered over through educational examples. You can also vote on the quality of others.
So what it said a little bit earlier is that the things that you've spent some time clicking or hovering over, it turns those words into educational activities. Later I'm going to show you a type of activity with that. You can also vote. This is a part of the social web, how we can vote, like, and do these other types of things. You can do that for people's translations.
Students' translations, which helps you learn by seeing how others translated the same sentence.
So you get to look at when you have a sentence and I have a sentence, I can see how you translated it, and you can see how I translated it. And you can start, that can help us as we compare translations, that can help us as well.
And because you create valuable translations while you learn, we return the favor by offering completely free of charge. No ads, no hidden fees, no subscriptions.
That's what we like. It's free, right?
Just free. To put the potential benefit of Duolingo into perspective, think about this. If 1 million people would use Duolingo to learn, the entirety of English Wikipedia could be translated to Spanish in just 80 hours. Duolingo. Learn a language.
Okay, so that's a little bit of Duolingo. I did want to show you one other aspect related to that. Here is a type of free activity that comes with Duolingo. So you know that there's translations, right? And then here's some of the other stuff, and I'll just play like 10 seconds. You'll get the idea quickly. Select the word girl. So you're looking at them across these French hospitals.
Basics 1, lesson 1. The girl. La fille. The woman. La femme.
See the feedback?
The girl.
And then they ask out the right. All right, internet's going down. Internet's out, but it's okay. You get the basic idea. And so my point to this was that we're also thinking about how to use social media. Large aspects of social media. How can we use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, these things that people love to do? That's actually the class that I'm teaching right at this moment on Monday nights. And I thought about bringing some of my students in to talk to you about their projects because they're so interesting about the ways that we're using the real world for language education. So let's recap some stuff then, shall we? Okay, so here's what we saw. We saw that technologies can work or function as tutors or tools. You know that. As tutors, the technology offers analysis and feedback. So we can use technology that others have created, but we need to consider the fit. Remember, teaching approach, objectives, cost, time, blah, 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 blah. We can also design our own tutorials. So you might learn how to do that. There's a lot of different software. You already have one lesson today with hot potatoes, right? So it's designing your own tutorials. But we also saw that technology functions as a tool. And so this is when the technology does not have a readily apparent teaching practice or presence. So when they're tools, though, we need to use concepts. So this is how we need to use frameworks, theories, and these other things to build. You can only build using a framework. An ant, a wasp, they have innately built frameworks. That's how they build their houses. Think about all the different types of houses humans can build. These massive, massive buildings. But in order to build nice things, you got to have good architectural principles. So we got to have those different types of things. So we need different types of concepts. Again, if you're interested in this, continue it. If you're interested in doing these things, like I said, I teach 6 classes on computer-assisted language learning. So if you want to come study, if this type of stuff interests you, come study. If not, it's okay too. There's a website for that if you want to know about it. Really easy, TESOLMA.com. TESOLMA.com. My email is here. If you ever have questions about technology, if you have questions about this presentation, if you have questions about the MA program or the PhD program, you can let me know. So it's been a pleasure talking with you. I hope that I was able to keep you awake enough. It's a TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Thank you for your time.